Hey, what's up, friends? Aaron from Unison here today. And today I wanted to kind of go over the fundamentals of house drums and just kind of what you can do to get creative with them. Because a lot of times I hear house drums, and you would think it's very simple. It's easy, it's just a four on the floor kick, a clap on the two on the four, and then just an offbeat hi hat, right? Well, I've definitely heard some stale house drums, but there's a lot that you can do to kind of give it more character, more groove, and just kind of really spice things up. So today we're going to go over 4 tips, and hopefully they'll help you kind of get a better idea of how to make your drums really smack, really feel groovy, and make house music that doesn't feel stale. Let's jump into it. All right. So if we look here, like I said before, typical house is a four on the floor kick and then a clap on the two and the four, and then an offbeat hi hat. Usually, that's kind of like basic house drum pattern, and that's kind of what a lot of producers learn first, just because it's very easy. But it does get stale very fast, and so how can we kind of go and spice it up? Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about today is just kind of adding variety, mainly in the hi hats. You can kind of do it with anything, but also, I mean, if you're making house, you kind of want to keep this pattern relatively the same, but you can kind of, make things groovier and a bit more interesting with just varying the hi hats. And so essentially, I have. Um, just these hi-hats here, but I also have these other hi-hats here that are kind of just like varying back and forth over a longer period of time. So if I go and stretch this out and I just turn on this accent hats group, I just have, nothing super crazy, but let's take a listen and hear how it sounds. You know, it's very subtle, but there's just kind of like these little splashes that are happening, just these two, and then there's just this additional hat that's hitting on the downbeat every 2 bars. And so just by doing that, it's subtle, but it kind of draws it out. And, because the variation is happening over a longer period of time, it kind of keeps it interesting because there's just this additional detail that's happening. Now, if I were to go and say, like, just do this and just double it up uh, across the bar, then it's like, okay, it's happening just as repetitively as the open hi hat, and it's just going to get old quick. So, by going and spacing things out like this, then it kind of allows for the overall pattern to just not get boring over time. I feel, anyways. So, what I could also do is just kind of have the hats do like a conversation. So, I could keep this hi hat here and this hi hat here, and they could kind of make their own collective sound. But I can also go ahead and just for now hit the zero key, and I just turn this one off because there's that hi hat happening right there. And since there's a hi hat right here, I could turn this one off as well. And so essentially, if I just go ahead and solo all the hi hats, it almost kind of sounds like a conversation between all the hats because, there's this one happening, then this one, then this one, then this, and so on and so forth. And so by doing that, it kind of just like allows for this conversation. So by kind of playing around with varying hi hats of like close hi hats, open hi hats, you got your rides, splashes, crashes, cymbals, all sorts of stuff like that, and kind of just like piecing them all together to where they're not overlaying each other like this and kind of creating this like call and response, I feel it can make it a lot more interesting in the hi-hats. And so even more so if I were to go and take this one that's happening on the downbeat and move it over to say like right there, and maybe I put it right here maybe, so that way they're kind of like talking back and forth. Maybe I could just cut that so it's kind of like this one is choking this one, or just cutting it off so it's like just like a quick. And then by doing that even and kind of copying like this, uh, sounds good. But again, by doing that, it's kind of like just creating more rhythm, more energy in the hi hats by doing that. And so maybe I could kind of switch it up like this. Like I could have like an open one the first time and then like maybe just none. But again, basically just kind of play around with the hi-hats, try different ones out, try just different variety. It's still staying in the house groove because if I go and play it with all the drums now, it still has like that nice bounce to it versus before it was just very kind of like stale and rigid. All right, so tip number 2 I want to talk about is swing. And this can kind of help, to have a bit more groove to your drums versus it feeling super rigid. And so over here, I have this section where I have this hi-hat pattern going on here. And, it's just a closed hi-hat. It's just kind of straightforward. It sounds like this. It's all kind of the same, like they're all hitting at the same velocity, and I kind of want to give it a bit more character. So what I want to go ahead and do is just go and I can just choose these velocities and kind of individually change the velocity of each of them, so that way they kind of play at different variations of like volume basically. And so if I just solo this for now, and so, okay, let's just say I like that and I just want to copy it over. We'll just do that for now. And already you can kind of notice some difference going on. It kind of has this like already kind of like swing or bounce to it. So then additionally what I can do is I can go over here to where it says groove. And underneath here, I have some presets I've already used, but if I wanted to go and look through some others, there's a ton of presets here. I just hit these 2 arrows right here, and it opens this menu up. I can kind of go through and preview each of them, see like what they sound like. But right now, I really like this hip hop NY cut. And so I can just hit this arrow key and it will apply that to the hats. And now I have this swing going on. Versus before, just to show you, it sound like this. Or, there we go. Yeah, it's just very like straightforward. But if I just apply it, this is kind of like cementing it in. Like now it's like, okay, it's been applied, but I can just kind of preview how the hats will sound before clicking this arrow here. So now I hear it. I'm like, oh, okay, I like it. I hit this button to apply it, and it will apply it to the actual notes here so I can see what it's actually done. And then in context, now it has a bit more variety with the different velocities and also with the swing as well. And so, you can do this to hi-hats. I can also do it to like a perk. I have this perk sound here as well. I'm not really liking the perk sound. So what I might do is go into this controls here and just lower this right here. And then here, maybe I'll raise the pitch up some. I'm just using the up arrow key to go up in pitch on the transposition here. I'll maybe go up like an additional octave. Kind of like that. So like that works really great. You can use that for percussion sounds. You could use that for hi-hats. You can honestly, apply it to like drums and stuff too. And so I've actually done it here. I've just added some kind of ghost notes, which is actually the third thing I want to talk about, which is like accent kicks, accent snares. I have some accent snares right here and right here. But, just adding little like accents as well, it still keeps the house groove going, but it additionally just adds more groove and more flavor to your drums. So if we listen here, I have the hi-hats going on. I'll turn off this percussion sound for now. But with the grooved kick and the clap and the hi-hats, it has like that bounce to it. And so all I did here is I just went ahead and, as you can see, there's this grid. But if I hold down Control on PC, or you can hold down Command on Mac, hold down Control and just hit the 1 key, which will kind of make this grid smaller. And then I'm hitting the 2 key to make it bigger. But what I did to get it to how it looks now is I used the 3 key, which changes the grid to a triplet grid. And so now I can go and just throw these on these kind of offbeats. And so now it has like a swung feel to it. And so this is a pattern I've heard a lot in more like groovier house, but you could just take the kick and you just do one right there, and you just do an additional one right after. This is basically, I believe it's a eighth note. If I wanted to see what I'm working with, I can just right click and go down here to the grid and I can see what I'm on. So right now I'm on 32s, but you know, there's like 8. Let me go back and switch over. So I just hit the 3, and now as you can see here, these are 8 notes, and then I have like 16th, 32, etc., and I can mess around with that here if I don't want to use the 1, 2, 3 keys that I was using. And so anyways, if I go down here, I can just find the triplet grid that way as well. As you can see here, Control 3 is the shortcut. I click that, and then now I have access to that. So I just put the kick there and the kick there outside of the typical 4 on the floor kick. And I just repeated that so that way it's happening every 2 beats here. So we have the 2 and the 4. And so it sounds like this. All right, so like I said, you know, I can do it to pretty much anything. You know, I did it to the kick here, but I can also do it to the clap. And I just threw it on this this second beat in this 30-second triplet, or in this 30-second grid mode. And so throw that there. I could throw maybe like another one after, like right here. You know, kind of play around with that. Right here. So just by kind of playing around with the variation, you know, don't be afraid to go and just like throw it at different places, see how it sounds, kind of get familiar with what moving the drum sounds around to different places does. And you know, by doing that, then it'll kind of help to kind of, you know, first off, get a sense of groove, and also second off to kind of know like, okay, if I place it here, it sounds like this. Place it over here, it sounds like this, etc., etc., etc. Also play with like the triplet groove again. Like if I threw it like right here, maybe. You know, you get some variety that way as well. Just want to take a quick second here to say if you're digging the sounds used in today's demo, most of them come from Volok's sample pack, which can be found on Unison Audio's website. I'll leave a link down in the description below where you can go and pick that up. All right, let's get back into the last tip now. All right, so the last tip that I want to talk about today is just using loops. Now you may be hearing that and being like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to use loops. I want to be known as that loops person, and like I want to make my own drums and all that stuff, right? Well, I mean, yes, you could definitely do that. You could definitely go and spend a lot of time working on drums. But for someone who may be kind of new to this, something that I do even still now is I will go and I'll take a loop and use it more as like a backing layer, versus actually just being like, okay, I'm taking the loop and I'm just going to drop it in there and that's it, I'm done. No, you definitely don't want to do that. I mean, unless you're new and you're just kind of messing around with loops, just kind of getting the hang of things. But, you know, I have these drums here that, you know, we've been working on in today's video, but I also have this loop here that I've had turned off. And so what I typically do is I'll throw it in there. And, you know, this right here, let me go ahead and take off the EQ. This is a full-blown loop. And so, you know, this is a loop that you can actually pick up for free on Unison's website. They have like a free drum series, and you can just grab it from there and mess around with these, or just throw them into your own productions if you just want to try some loops out. But essentially what I do is I'll go and I'll cut the lows out because I don't want the kick. I just kind of like some of these additional hats, and especially since, you know, here in this section I have these more swung hats. In this loop, the hats are also swung as well. And, you know, there's like some other kind of additional, it sounds like perk sounds going on as well. But it also has a similar drum groove to what I have here with my drum here. So if we listen together, you know, it feels very similar. And so I like to just go and just add that in there just for kind of like a backing layer. You know, you can EQ it. If you're like, oh, I don't like the hats, you can roll the hats out like so. and you can just kind of get like those mids if you want, just to have like more fullness in the mid range. You know, it's totally up to you to kind of just like manipulate this loop. You know, I can go and also like chop it up. If I'm like, oh, I just like this one part here, I could just, you know, like take the kick out like so, get rid of all the kicks. I mean, it does get kind of tedious, but you know, you have like this kind of, you know, it's totally up to you. Go and manipulate the loop and do whatever you feel with it. But I think just sometimes taking little pieces like that, they kind of might do a better job of what you might be envisioning for your song. So if you're like, oh, I like this loop, I want something like that, I just don't fully know how to make it yet, then, you know, it's okay to kind of go and just grab and just put in there for even if it's just for now, and then you can go and recreate it later, spend some time with it, and then just take the loop out. But I like to use loops like this and just drop them in the background, kind of for like inspiration like this, to just be like, oh, okay, this is like how I envision it will sound. You know, when I'm just kind of trying to just like get through the process of just creating and making, and I'm not trying to do all the tedious details. I'm just gonna like grab a loop and just like roll off the kicks and stuff like that, and just do like a quick little just like finesse like that. And then I can get my idea out and just keep moving forward, and then come back later and recreate it if I wanted to. All right, y'all, that's it for today's video. Hopefully this kind of gives you some more insight to approaching house drums, and will kind of give you some inspiration for when you're making a house track next time. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing to the channel, leave a thumbs up on the video, and then if you have any other methods that you might personally use when you're making house music, please leave a comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.